Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Norwich City's long trip to Wigan is facing us this weekend. Obviously, they are in the relegation zone at the moment, but Norwich City coming into the back of this with a very good result during the week there against Hull City. And Adam Harvey, delighted to be joined by Samuel Seaman for your preview show. Sam, I think the best place to start is that game during the week, just a few days on now from that free win at Carrow Road. It's probably the win we all needed. Everyone, in terms of the home form, hasn't seen a win now since October, so that kind of, just relieved that pressure. Just want to get your take on it a few days on.
Yeah, it feels like the sort of performance we've seen a few times this season, not particularly regularly, and that's where the problem lies, really. As much as it felt like quite a positive atmosphere, Carrow Road, and it was a nice place to be on Tuesday night, they've performed like this a few times this season, and we now want to see that consistency. Obviously, at the start of David Wagner's reign, there were those 2 4-goal away wins that we hoped to see backed up, and they weren't. When Norwich had those games against Burnley and Bristol. So to see them back on form was really good, and to see the performance go with the result as well as that was pretty exciting. David Wagner spoke in his post-match press conference about how he saw the style he wants to see from his team, and I think that identifiable tactical trademark style of play is something that Norwich fans have been hoping to see for a while now. So to see all those elements come together on Tuesday was fantastic. I don't want to talk it down too much, but in isolation it means very little because Norwich are still 9th in the Championship and their goal remains promotion to the Premier League this season. So there are still plenty of steps to take, and as we've said so many times this season, it feels like this is quite a big game because they've lacked that consistency throughout, and this Wigan game is an opportunity to go and back up a really impressive performance with another one, but we haven't seen too much of that so far. So hopefully fortunes can turn around and David Wagner can prove that what he's produced for this team isn't just a flash in the pan that will show itself at times, and that we'll actually see the signs of a consistent team that show consistent elements as we saw at Carrow Road on Tuesday.
Yeah, it feels particularly impressive given the fact that he were without Teemu Pukki, who's sort of despite probably being a little bit more quiet this season, he's still, in terms of goal contributions, in terms of actual goals and assists, has been top of the ranks for Norwich City by quite a far stretch. Little bit of an update on him yesterday. Just going to play a clip from David Wagner and then we'll get into that.
Teemu, are you expecting that just to be out for this game and then should be a return, or are you expecting something a little bit more long-term with that?
If long-term means a month, then I don't expect it. We have to assess. We are knowing that he will be out for Saturday. What it means for the rest of next week's or for the rest of the next week, we have to see.
Yeah, so potentially a big blow there for Norwich City. 3 big games coming up. It feels like 3 quite pivotal games in terms of whether they're going to be in amongst that playoff mix. You kind of look at this run now coming: Wigan, Birmingham, Cardiff, all sides that on paper, Norwich City have got to be beaten if they do have aspirations of getting in the top 6. So, Sam, how big a blow is that if Pukki is out? We sort of saw it on Tuesday night. Wagner saying after the game he kind of dropped him just due to sort of fatigue. He felt that he wasn't at his best at Bristol, but then he picked up a slight strain in terms of training at half time during the game the other night. So to be missing him, how big a blow is that, particularly given that Wagner likes playing with 2 strikers?
Yeah, it's quite a blow. I think the way that football works, Tuesday will have tended to act as a sort of smoke screen in terms of how much of a blow that will be. And it's natural for all of us to go, oh, maybe Norwich don't need Teemu Pukki. But when you look back over the last few years, he's been Norwich's best consistent and most consistent performer for a really long time. And if he's out now for a period of games, you do wonder if that influence will be missed. But obviously, I firstly talked it down. So to add some optimism after that whole game, Sargent and Ida did look really effective as a striking duo. So I think David Wagner, he sort of got asked that follow-up question and he said that they have 2 top-class strikers. And they do have options up there at Championship level, no doubt about it. Josh Sargent is Norwich's top scorer so far this season. And Adam Ida, I thought, was really, really good in the second half, especially against Hull. And there's a reason why he's been given a long-term contract. I think it's till 2028, is it? And so Norwich clearly see some talent in him and a player who they think can produce on a consistent level, if not now, in future. And I think we've seen the signs of somebody who, at least in the short term, I'm not sure he could be trusted, especially given the injury issues that Wagner actually spoke about yesterday, to perform over sort of 10, 15 games just yet. Not ruling it out, but I don't think you could guarantee it. But I think for 2 or 3 games, if that's what Pukki's going to miss, Norwich do have options. As you said, my main issue would be the depth and the fact that Wagner does like to play with those 2 central strikers, and not only the worry that if one of them gets injured or suspended or whatever it happens to be, they'll only have one, but also that lack of options is a real problem. And you saw it in the Premier League with Norwich last season, in that they would go 1-0 down and Dean Smith was turning to the bench, and how many Premier League quality options that could really affect the game did he actually have? And that lack of depth could end up being a problem, especially in the forward areas, because those are the areas really where you want to be able to turn to your bench and have different options. And of course, they've got the likes of Christos Schollis, Marquinhos hopefully returning to fitness imminently, and other players who will think they can contribute creatively. But when it comes to finishing off chances, if Josh Sargent and Adam Idah are both out of form at the same time, Norwich don't really have somebody in and around the box to finish off those chances that are created. So it is quite a worry. Hopefully Pukki will be back sooner rather than later. But the crumb of comfort I would offer Norwich fans is that Josh Sargent and Adam Idah have both looked impressive at different times this season. And you hope after the confidence that Tuesday will have provided, they'll be able to go forward with that, at least for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, just staying on the theme in terms of the attacking areas, a certain man I want to hone in on, Kieran Dowell, obviously ex-Wigan, spent a loan spell there, sort of the back end of what season would that have been? The season they went down, I remember scoring a hat-trick against Hull. And yeah,
so 1920, was it?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, so certainly a player that Wigan fans will know as well. Just want to sort of get your take on him, Sam, because you sort of saw in the first 2 games, he scored 3 goals in Wagner's first 2 away games there, 2 away at Preston, 1 away at Coventry. Then I felt it was quite quiet in terms of the Burnley game and the Bristol City game. And then the other night, I didn't feel like he was having his best game up until him sort of scoring the goal. And that really sort of kick-started him again. So I just want to sort of get your take on these 5 games now. What do you make of Kieran Dowell under David Wagner? Does he look like a man who's revived, or is it still a little bit of inconsistency in terms of his output?
A little bit of inconsistency, but I'd still say he's been Norwich's best player since Wagner arrived, especially when you consider that I'd say the Burnley and Bristol games were team-wide problems. You couldn't really pin those performances on any particular individuals sort of throughout the games. So I still think Dowell actually does look like Norwich's best player in recent games, and Wagner's probably looking at it thinking he's got a real player on his hands and somebody who really suits his system. As you say, I don't think against Hull he was actually particularly good. There were a few sort of little through balls that he tried and attempts at creativity that didn't quite come off during that game. But the best forward players, when they're not having good games, and it's a bit of a cliche, but they produce things like goals and assists. And when it came to the crucial moment, Kieran Dowell scored, and you just think, had he not had the temperament and the confidence and the quality at that stage, I know it took a deflection, but he still managed to force it over the line at that stage. Could Norwich have ended up really frustrated and 1-0 down against Hull as they were against Bristol? And you just think that moment of quality really changes the game. And sometimes I feel like that's underrated a little bit in football. We look perhaps even too much at overall performances. And while you can't get away with the large majority of players having bad games, at the end of the day, the average game has like 1 or 2 big moments. And when the big moment falls to Kieran Dowell, if he doesn't score that, it's a totally different complexion. So you have to praise him for just that one big moment and that one moment of quality. And I think that showed what he's all about, really. I think we know that when he has space in and around the attacking areas, he's got unbelievable quality for the Championship level. His technique is absolutely fantastic. But as Wagner's highlighted, it's just about increasing those physical elements in that defending and perhaps the work rate at times as well. And from what I've seen in recent games, I think he is actually improving upon that. And whether that's enough to earn him a new contract, I think is probably a separate discussion, because that is an issue that's going to need addressing very soon, given he's out in the summer. But for now, I think just continue to hope that he can produce, because he has really been a key man. He's never going to be, for me, he's not quite on the level of an Emi Buendia or perhaps even a Wes Hoolahan at times, where they're going to actually take the game by the scruff of the neck and almost see 40% of possession by themselves. he's always going to be a player who sort of floats in and out of games and sometimes is on the periphery a little bit. But I think when he gets the ball in the right conditions, you can always think there's a pretty strong chance he's going to produce something. And that's a massive thing for Norwich to have at this level, where the quality is really what will tell for them. So I think he can continue to be a key player. But as you said, as it is with all the rest of the players, and we keep saying this, and people are probably sick of us saying this now, but it's just all about the consistency, and hopefully he can bring that to his game.
Yeah, so I'll turn the attention to this weekend's opposition, Wigan Athletic. They've had a little bit of a strange season. They're currently in the bottom three, but very much within touching distance of survival still at this point. I think they've got a game in hand on Cardiff, so they're going to be well up for this. Obviously, Sean Maloney's just gone in there 3 games ago, picked up 5 points from an available 9, which is a massive upturn in form, especially sort of that period under Kolo Toure, where I think they only got 1 point. So that shows how tough a period that was. I was speaking to a good friend of mine who's actually a Wigan fan this week on Terrace Talk, and he was kind of saying about their season and how it started so well, and it feels like now is kind of the time where they need to hit some form, and they suddenly have kind of done that. So that said, Sam, they're bottom of the home form table. They really struggled at home, just 3 wins out of 16 games at the DW. And Norwich, obviously, as we know, in recent weeks, as a general rule, have been very good on the road. So just want to get your thoughts on Wigan and Sean Maloney.
Yeah, it's one of those, it's difficult to avoid cliches. And when we're being realistic, these are the sorts of games that if Norwich want to be promoted, they do have to be winning. But it's also the sort of game I worry about a little bit, having seen the Bristol City performance. It feels like Norwich are good under David Wagner when the conditions are there. But you go to Bristol City and they concede a soft goal and they get frustrated, and it feels quite awkward. And Wagner highlighted the elements in the press conference yesterday that the pitch isn't going to be great. Wigan are on the up, having now obviously got Sean Maloney as their new manager and perhaps having that cliched bounce. So I think it is genuinely quite a difficult time for Norwich to play them. And if they navigate this, I will be really impressed, especially given what they did against Hull on Tuesday. That's another element with the sort of 4 days of rest. But you have to also consider Wigan have gone from Bristol up there to, on I think it was Wednesday night they played, or Tuesday night. So there's not a lot of rest involved for either team. It's probably going to be a little bit of a slog, a little bit of a battle. And whichever team copes with the elements around the game and the possible distractions best, I think we'll be in a really good position to go on and win it. But make no doubt about it, Norwich were one of the favourites for promotion when they were relegated last season, and they're facing a team who were promoted from League One and are now in the relegation places. There's not really too much of an excuse, as much as I've provided that mitigation and I've said why maybe it's going to be difficult. I don't think it's going to be easy, but they need to find a way around these sorts of tasks if they're going to reach the levels that they hope to. Producing that consistency is going to be difficult, especially when these sorts of championship tests come up. But, as I said, that you look at the players, and I'm sure we'll get the team sheets tomorrow and we'll be able to look down the 11s, and the difference will be enormous in terms of the money spent, the wages they receive, the reputations of the players, and the talent of the players, probably realistically. So as much as there is mitigation, as there always is at championship level, you look at the likes of Burnley and Sheffield United, who Norwich felt they would be competing with at the start of the season, and they felt they'd be in those upper echelons, and they're just finding a way to just stroll through all of the teams in this league, no matter how bad the pitch is or how difficult the schedule is. So Norwich, if they don't want to continue to make excuses, need to be winning these sorts of games, to be honest.
Yeah, Wigan got lots of sort of physical threats up front. Will Keane, certainly a player to watch out for. 10 goals so far this season. They've also got Ashley Fletcher, who scored against Bristol City the other night. So definitely going to be a different test for Norwich, as it is the case with the Championship. Lots of different teams with different strengths. So with that, Sam, just want to get your thoughts on the game. Norwich not won at the DW since 2014, albeit they've not played there very often. Last time out was that 1-1 draw. Pukki's late equaliser that sent them 4 points top of the Championship, and obviously eventually the promotion was shortly sealed after. So yeah, just want to get your general thoughts on the game, Sam. Where's this game going to be won and lost?
I think it depends on Norwich City's creativity more than anything. Most of these games against sort of lower level opposition, where they've struggled, it's been because they've looked sterile and they've looked like they don't have the movement and the ideas to be able to create chances. I think that was the case against Bristol, who, although they haven't struggled as much as Wigan, have struggled throughout this season to produce results. And I think it will come down to when they're in front of that packed Wigan defence and they have to break it down and they have to find ways into the box. Do they have the guile and the temperament and the creativity to be able to find those gaps into the attacking areas? Because I think they have the players, but again, it all comes down to the consistency. And I think it was probably pertinent that all of Norwich's best players for me against Hull were the players who we've questioned on consistency. You look at Gabriel Sara, Onel Hernandez, obviously Kieran Dowell getting the goal. Adam Eder, I think, has struggled to consistently produce good performances. With that a lot of that comes down to injury, but it's still the case. And I think if some of those players can produce again, it will be probably a good result for Norwich. But again, if they're not in the right mentality and it's the same side we see against Bristol, it's going to be really difficult for them to create chances. I think defensively they should have enough not to concede more than one or two against Wigan, unless there are some serious errors involved. So for me, it comes down to an attacking problem-solving scenario, and that's a scenario they've been really mixed at so far this season. It also comes down to Wigan tactically, I think, because Hull's failure to press Norwich on Tuesday, I felt had a big part to play in the result and how easy Norwich found it to play. So if Wigan have done their homework and tried to exploit the weaknesses that the likes of Burnley have in recent weeks, I think there could be real trouble for Norwich. But in terms of the quality of the players, I'd like to say I see it showing and I see Norwich coming away with the result, but it's so difficult nowadays to be able to predict just because of that up and down nature of their season so far. But yeah, for me, it just comes down to, can they create the chances? If they can create 4 or 5 good chances, I think they're coming back to Carrow Road with 3 points.
Yeah, it does get the feeling that set pieces could be quite crucial in this one, given Wigan's kind of physical presence. The likes of Max Power, Watmore, very big physical players that, in terms of winning set pieces, will be very good at that. And Norwich obviously have struggled a little bit in terms of dealing with those in recent weeks. Sam, it's come around to that point in the show, score prediction time. So to round off the show, put in a score prediction for this one.
Yeah, I said on Tactics board, and that was a bit of a snap prediction, 1-1. I didn't give myself much time to think on that one, but having had a few hours to mull it over, I probably do still feel like that. And I know it's not particularly exciting news to bring to our viewers. They probably want to hear that it's going to be a better result for Norwich. But the way they've performed this season, it's so difficult to see them putting together a really good performance on a Tuesday and then doing it again on the Saturday, because I don't think we've seen that on too many occasions. So I think the quality will tell in that Wigan won't have enough to beat Norwich, but I don't see a full-flowing best display as we saw at Carrow Road on Tuesday. And unfortunately, I think they'll only be able to break Wigan down to the tune of 1 goal, and I will go with a 1-1. Also, I just feel like Wigan as a club have 1-1 written all over it. The last 2 games against Norwich have been 1-1. I feel like when I started watching football back sort of 15 years ago on Match of the Day, every week it felt like Wigan were drawing 1-1. It felt like 1-1 with Stoke was the only result they ever played out. So going to the DW, it feels like it's going to be difficult to escape that scoreline. And I will say 1-1, unfortunately. What about you, Adam? You're going to bring some extra optimism?
Yeah, 1-1 does seem quite a common theme between these two clubs as well. Just look back, there was the 1-1, obviously the last time the two sides met at the DW, last time they met at Carrow Road. There was that season, the first season in the Premier League, Norwich's first away game, Wes Houlihan, that was a 1-1 draw. There was Mitchell Dykes as well on a Tuesday night, that was a 1-1 draw at the DW. So that is a very, very common theme. But I'm going to predict a Norwich City 1-0 victory. Feeling more positive, I think, after Wednesday night. Norwich been very good on the road as well. And also we spoke about the fact that Wigan played on Wednesday night, Norwich played on Tuesday. So they've had that extra day's rest as well, which is always, quite a little bit of a key in terms of that. And I just feel like Norwich's quality will just tell enough to get a victory. So, yeah, going to be positive. 1-0 Norwich, 3 points, and the playoff hunt is back on. Sam, just finally, I suppose the Wigan kebab is the culture up there. Are you looking forward to trying one of those this weekend?
I honestly don't know where I would. I was talking to Connor, our colleague, the other day about this. The fact that we've been to now probably most of the major cities in the UK, and I'm not sure I know what any of them look like because we just sort of go into the stadium and out again. I do love a pie. Am I right? It's like a pie in a bap. That's a Wigan kebab.
Correct. Yeah.
And that actually sounds quite appealing. Weirdly, I think I see myself as a bit of a culture man, as I'm sure you do, Adam. But when it comes to that does sound quite nice. It does sound not too bad. But unfortunately, unless they're serving them in the press area, which I'd be quite surprised by, I'm not sure I'll get a chance to try one. But maybe when I go on my big holiday to Wigan at the end of the year, that'll be something I'll try out. But yeah, it's a shame that really, because it sounds surprisingly, it sounds like one of those things that would be weirdly nice. Have you ever had one before?
No, I must confess, never had one. But yeah, Ben, my friend, I spoke to on Terrace Talk, which is a little bit of a plug there. He's a big fan of the Wigan kebab. So I think that's a staple. If you're up in the north and in Wigan area, then yeah, certainly the away fans, the 1,300 Norwich fans making the trip up, I think if you get the opportunity, then yeah, try it out and send us a message on socials or any platform. You can get in touch with us and let us know what you think. I think that will round off the show. We're going to head towards Greg's, who also serve pies, strangely enough, for lunch before we hit the road to Wigan. Other establishments obviously are available. Just on that note, lots of great video content across our channels at the moment. I already spoke about Terrace Talk there. Sam's Tactics board video is up a little bit on sort of Adam Eder and Josh Sargent, their relationship, and a predicted 11 in there. Obviously, David Wagner spoke to the media last night at 5 p.m. So the full press conference is available on our YouTube channel. So you can go and see what David Wagner's thinking ahead of this one. Lots of obviously great content on the Pink and Plus app as well. If you're not a Pink and Plus subscriber, then free trial, $1.99 a month thereafter. You got Ewan Roberts' latest column is now up. Chris Sutton done a great column as well during the week around referees, which obviously is very topical in football at the moment. So yeah, if you're not a Pink Plus subscriber, then you might as well go try it out. You can always cancel. We hope you don't, but obviously, it's a free reign to do what you like. With that, we're going to hit the road. If you're making the long trip to Wigan, then bring the noise. Fingers crossed you can be rewarded with a good result. Another very long trip. But yeah, looking forward to it. So yeah, fingers crossed Norwich City can deliver. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you at the DW Stadium tomorrow afternoon.